If you're dealing with stiff and achy hips, this is the video for you. As a physical therapist, I'm going to show you my top 4 favorite mobility movements that can help loosen up the hip joint and the muscles around it. These movements can actually be more beneficial than just static stretching. I want you to stay till the end because number 4 is my personal favorite and one that I think every person out there should master. These movements are going to make walking easier, getting in and out of the car, those activities that stiff hips can really make difficult. With that being said, let's get started. Movement number 1 is going to target the front of the hip, those hip flexors that bring your leg up. These can become irritated and painful, and then they can also become tight. Instead of doing just a regular stretch where you're trying to pull on those muscles, instead, we're going to take a gentle approach and swing your leg forwards and backwards. Now, this isn't a movement where you're trying to bring it up as high as you can and then bring it back down like some common sports warm-ups. Gentle. Gentle is the name of the game. You're not trying to stress the muscle. You're trying to let it relax. So think about using momentum forwards and backwards as you swing the leg. You'll notice that the support is strategically placed on my left side. So I have a point of contact on my right, a point of contact on my left, and the limb in the middle is moving. If I were to swing the outside, a lot of times what happens is people tend to lean, especially if you have difficulty or pain putting full weight on one leg. We don't want this leaning motion. Up nice and tall, which is why I like the support this way or in front of you this way. So you can optimize this movement. You're not having to feed into compensations. You can set a timer for this one, 30, maybe 60 seconds, or count however many times your leg comes in front. If we're doing it that way, starting with about maybe 20 swings may be helpful. This should not hurt. It's just a very gentle motion, trying to let your leg relax. Movement number 2 is targeting the inner thighs and just helping to lubricate the hip joint. When starting this motion, I want you to adopt a wide stance. Now, if you have hip osteoarthritis or just have very stiff hips, opening your feet like this may be difficult. So just open as far as you can comfortably. You can start to work into this as you get going as well. Feet are pointed forwards. Just work on shifting your weight one side and then the other. So watch what happens as I shift my weight to my left side. This knee becomes relaxed. It's not bent, it's just relaxed. This leg that I'm leaning away from is staying straight. That's when you can start to feel that stretch. A lot of activities, especially walking and stair climbing, require a constant weight shift. And if you have difficulty in mobility of your hips, it can be hard to quickly shift your weight, which may explain why walking might be a little difficult. A gentle movement, side to side, not only helps to stretch the groin area, but also helps to activate those hip muscles. As I lean most of my weight to one side, I'm activating those hip muscles as well as stretching the opposite inner thigh. Take your feet out a little bit wider if you're able to, and just focus on shifting. Maybe about 20 to 30 shifts. Again, should be a gentle movement. Don't force anything. This should feel good. It should get the joints moving. If you need to, you can also add support to this right in front of you. Movement number 3 works a vital range of motion that tends to be restricted if you have tight hips, and that's hip extension, where your leg comes behind your body. This range of motion is incredibly important for walking, taking nice big steps. If you're limited here, you may find yourself taking small steps or maybe even shuffling. This movement also works the feet and the ankles, which makes it a great addition to a walking warm-up. Start in a staggered stance. Ideally, when you're doing this, you will work both sides, so it doesn't matter which foot starts in front. Take your feet out as far as you feel comfortable with. If you are limited here, you may need to start a little more narrow. But as you get going, you might notice that you can access a little bit more range of motion and push that back foot little bit further. You're going to adopt a rocking motion. I'm going to shift my weight back and lift this front toes. Then shift my weight forwards and lift that back heel. And repeat this at a speed you're comfortable with. This is also going to challenge balance, so please have some support near you, as your feet tend to be a little more narrow in this stance. One key thing, make sure your back foot stays pointed forwards as best as possible. If you start to let it get out, it can alter the stress that's going through that back knee. So try to keep that foot pointed forwards, and also push that heel down to the ground. You can start with about 10 to 20 of these rocks on one side, and then you can switch to the other side. But every couple, you can see if you can gain a little bit more range of motion and push that foot a little further back, and then repeat this. As that foot goes back, though, you do need the accompanying ankle mobility, because I want to make sure that that heel is still able to get down to the floor. If it's not, you need to narrow your stance a bit more. Now pay close attention to movement number 4. This is an incredibly important movement to unlock vital hip mobility, also to take stress away from the back if you're experiencing some intermittent back pain as well. You will need a chair for this one. Feet are about hip width apart. I am looking at a space that's right in front of my chair, maybe about 3 to 4 feet in front of me. Relax your knees. Sit your hips back, still keeping your gaze forward. Relax the arms. And then squeeze yourself up. This is a great one to do in front of a mirror so you can see how you're actually moving. You're trying to separate the hips from the back. So a lot of times when people do this, they tend to round and notice my hips aren't really going back at all. It's not a movement from the back, it's a movement in the hips. So sometimes I even have people take their hands and put them basically on their hips and actually push your hips back. This one takes some practice, but what you should be feeling as you sit your hips back is a tightness through the backs of the legs, the hamstrings. As I squeeze forward, I'm using my glutes to bring my hips forward. Sit your hips back and bring them forwards. This movement is all about quality, especially if you have tight hamstrings. This one can be very beneficial because you're working through an important range of motion, stretching those hamstrings and then also allowing them to relax as you stand up. If you don't necessarily feel this in your hamstrings, what you can also try is standing against a wall and then taking a small step forwards. From here, try to touch your hips to the wall and come forwards. Touch your hips to the wall and come forwards. This hinging motion is important when you sit down, when you get into a car. It also helps to build vital strength in the backs of your legs. This movement is something to master. Try 8 to maybe 12 to start with, because again, this shouldn't be causing significant pain. This should feel good. And then you can increase from there. If you want to make significant changes to your hip mobility, you have to be consistent. Being able to build a regular routine is vital to your success of loosening up the joint and decreasing the muscle tightness. Choosing 2 or maybe even all 4 of these movements, completing them every day, maybe every other day, can be a great place to start. But please keep in mind, if you have hip arthritis, you may experience a fluctuation in pain, the available range of motion, and just how your joint is feeling on a day-to-day basis. So adapt yourself to these movements. If you need to minimize the range of motion, maybe do a few less reps. That's okay. The key is making sure you keep moving in ways that your joint actually likes. If you're forcing a joint into a position that it's just not ready for, that can just further increase pain. If you are also dealing with, along with tight hips, pain or pinching in the front of the hip, no, you are not alone. And I have a video specifically for you. We'll talk about why this front of the hip tightness pain happens and a couple of movements to help fix it. Those movements are a great supplement to the movements that we talked about today. If you are ready to just take the fast track to building strength, improving balance, and finally having your joints feel good and strong again, I'd highly recommend checking out Adventures for Life. It is our arthritis workout program and community of people who are ready to get out there and adventure. We have live events, live workouts, tons of follow along workouts with me to help you feel confident again. I'm going to put the link down below where you can see that. If this video was helpful, you can click that red subscribe button down below so you get updates when I release new videos. That way you can also share it with all of your friends, family members, loved ones who may be dealing with tight hips, hip arthritis, or just looking for some movements that are going to make their joints feel good. Thank you so much for watching, and I cannot wait to see you in the next video.